And we are back. I'm going to play the video in the background whilst we talk. We're going to grab some questions from chat throughout the. We've been watching you. Vacnar and Roshan, our wonderful community managers, have been. We have like a party that's happening on Discord, and we've got a Twitch chat. So we've definitely been keeping an eye out for your guys' questions and trying to snag all of the details. So first and foremost, I think, Stephen, you wanted to kind of address performance. And I know that's something that
Yeah,
we are working on drastically. Even with our PI users, we've been getting all the PC specs and
yeah,
stuff like that and working towards that.
yeah. And those the initial performance work that's being done right now is mainly on the network side. But what you guys are noticing on the FPS and the client side rendering, that is stuff that we are going to be working on over the next few months. And you should see some very significant lift in those areas. Sometimes it can get a little bit unruly while we're in active development. Certain assets can get certain places that might need to be adjusted. We might be getting draw calls from across the map. You might have some cloth simulation that's just a little heavy on some hair. Like there's a few things obviously that are kind of low hanging fruit, that our performance teams will focus on. You'll see that get better, obviously, as we get closer to Alpha 2. So it is on the top of our minds. We do definitely address that. We recently released also some of our min spec and recommended specs for Alpha 2. You can take a look at that on the website. Um,
Yeah, you go to
so
our
yeah,
support section and look at our KB articles or our knowledge base articles. Sorry, I call it KBA, but our knowledge base articles and just type in specs and it should be there for you. So we have all that information already there. And keep in mind that is just for Alpha 2. We will be changing that as we move forward in Beta 1 and Beta 2 and then launch. We're obviously going to keep optimizing. From to give perspective, most games are not worrying about performance and optimization this early
right,
on. Usually you're
yeah,
just developing like crazy and then you do the
right.
performance stuff later towards when you're ready to open for beta or the alphas these days, which are basically like beta ones.
Right, yeah,
Um, so just kind of keeping that in mind because we're in open development, it's a little bit different for us, in development process. The next
yeah,
question we have here, the rest of them are more fighter based. The next question here
sure.
is, will the battle cry sound effect change based on your race and
Yes.
sex?
Yeah, and that's not just obviously for battle cry, but any type of incantation is generally going to adhere to a certain style of vocal that's respective of the character customization options that you've selected.
Yeah. And you'll hear those audio voices in other things that we do in the
Mhm.
future. Are any of these abilities changed based on weapon choice? So example, if I have a bow equipped, will whirlwind be different based on that?
No, so in one thing that we've changed, which since Alpha 1, is we now have a dedicated ranged slot and a dedicated main hand offhand for melee slots. And so if you use an ability that is utilizing your ranged slot, you will spawn that weapon as you're using the ability, and then go back to your basic weapon selection toggle, and you can toggle back and forth between using the ranged weapon slot or the melee weapon slot for your basic weapon attacks.
All right. And then the next one here is, what percentage of currently complete fighter abilities don't require a target? Something that folks noticed is that you were in action combat a few times throughout this as well. So I don't know
Yeah,
how you want to
yeah,
express that.
absolutely. I tried to play a little bit of action there. I saw some of the commentary about my playing. I just want to say that
I told him in advance there was going to be comments.
that's totally fine. Like, hey, I want you as the viewer to look and say, man, I could play way better than you, right? And then get in here and show it in Alpha 2. No, I'm just kidding.
There was a couple
You know,
times where I'm like, Steven, you were wandering around over here and the boss was there.
somebody on Discord today said that I'm a boomer. And I said, technically, I'm a millennial, but I play like a boomer. So I guess I'm a millennial.
And they were like, just stop. I
I
saw that
know.
in the Discord.
It's so good. Okay, what was the actual question? Oh, what percentage are templated attacks versus requiring a
Target.
target?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I would say off the top of my head, I think there's probably 4 or 5 abilities right now that require a single target, and then I think the rest are either like on self or some, template conal attack or something.
Yeah, fighter's very AoE heavy. Will there be a limit to the stacks on bosses? So there was a lot of debuffs and what do we call it, status effects and things like that that were being stacked onto things, and they were curious if there's limits to certain stacks. And also, can you, for instance, an example would be, can I one shot a boss by stacking wounded for an hour?
No. Yeah, that's absolutely. There's diminishing returns. There are max stack counts. Those are types of things that kind of depend on the target we're talking about. Bosses are obviously going to have the higher end of resistances and
Immunity.
diminishing returns and immunities. Absolutely.
Hmm.
So the intent is not to provide an infinite stack count. Absolutely.
And to follow up on that, just because I know there might be some subsidiary questions of that, which is, would those stacks be per or per person or per archetype or per the type of status effect?
Those would be predicated on the status effect type. So not
So if you
respective
put burning
of.
on it, it would be everybody in the raid has to adhere to that limit
That's correct. Yep.
for context. Okay. And then
And
how,
just to
oh,
be
go ahead.
clear, like that is absolutely something that we're going to be testing. We've on the design team, we've had a number of discussions with regards to how to surface kind of individual stack application versus like group and raid combat requirements there. There's a few different options that are available obviously to us. We've decided on a certain direction for the purposes of alpha 2, but I believe we've actually prototyped a few of the different options just to get a feeling for how that is currently in our combat testing. um, um, so yeah, just stay tuned for that. Obviously alpha 2 is going to have
Yeah.
testing with that.
And you guys will be either experiencing it or watching it in Alpha 2. And so definitely share with us your thoughts. We'll be making changes and balancing things as we move forward. How will augments work to help a fighter hold aggro if their secondary archetype is a tank? And I know that that's like going deeper into secondary archetypes, but
Sure.
folks are curious about it.
I mean, just to give a general response there without getting into too much of the specifics, because obviously augments are something that we are still kind of outstanding in our development slash inspection there. The idea is that obviously threat generation is a core component of the tank archetype. So as a fighter, if you're selecting the tank as your secondary archetype, you're going to have certain spheres of augments that you can apply to your abilities to help maintain threat, to potentially even momentarily take aggro from a particular target in order to better service that role of the tank in combat. Now, what that will specifically equate to, I don't have an answer for you now. That's something that we'll be testing in the future. But know that the goal with providing those selections to the fighter will be to service a secondary threat generation, effect. Um, yeah.
And then the next one is momentum being generated while under the effects of exert?
Say that. I'm sorry, I was getting distracted. Everybody in chat saying stare. Why are they
I
saying
know.
stare?
I don't know. Maybe someone rated us or something like that. Is
I know.
momentum being generated while under the effects of exert?
Is momentum being generated while underneath? Yes, absolutely. That's part of the mechanic that is currently incorporated into Exert, is that you can activate Exert while max momentum, and then depending on the effectiveness of you utilizing your skills and damaging targets, you can continue to keep that momentum up while under the effects of Exert to extend its lifetime beyond what the 6 seconds initially are.
We appreciate the raid. We always do from everybody. We just are also trying to be conscious of folks' time, so we don't always mention them. The next one is, will ranged archetypes have ways of gaining distance to compensate for fighter distance closers? Would you keep doing this until both players have cooldowns for their mobility? And I just want to say we haven't balanced everything yet, so there will definitely
Right.
be adjustments.
So the question is, are there gap creators in addition to the gap closers that we see on the fighter? Or
It's will ranged archetypes specifically, like your mage, your ranger,
well, we
your
see,
more ranged
will they
folks.
have?
Will
Yeah,
they
I
have
mean,
ways to gain distance to compensate for how well the fighter can gap close?
yeah, absolutely. That's the cat and mouse of these abilities, right? Like we've seen with the ranger, they have a backflip, they have their airdrop ability. The mage has teleportation. Um, there are going to be abilities that are tit for tat, right? And managing the resource of those abilities and the timing of when you use them to either correlate to your opponent's use of those things, um, or to save them for yourself when you want to get away. Like that's part of what makes the engagements dynamic and different each time.
Yeah, and if you go back and you watch like our mage archetype preview or our ranger specific archetype preview, you will see that they also have some abilities to slow, snare, keep their targets in place, and also to get themselves more mobile. Especially the ranger has a lot of mobility as well. So,
Mhm.
and there will be balance. We're not in the balancing state. So obviously, right now, every class we show, they're like it's OP, but right now we're trying to find the fun. So sometimes the fun is a little
Correct.
OP, but the balance will come
Yes,
into play. And of course,
absolutely.
you'll see these abilities move around too. Some of them might move into secondary archetypes or augments and things like that. So just keep that in mind. The next question is: do destructibles respawn? Because one of the
They
things that
do,
you had said
yes.
in there was like, oh, maybe they won't come back home, and like someone was like,
No,
oh, I
they
wish that was the case, but yeah.
no, I was just being a little role play. Yes, destructibles. So, obviously not a lot of MMOs that we have all probably played are intending to provide a heavily destructible environments. These set pieces, like the different props you saw in this demonstration, the huts, the totem poles and stuff, those are unique to the Goblin tribe, the Mukma tribe. And part of our dynamic world is that as population tables change, so too do the corresponding prop sets that are utilized within the area to better reflect that dynamic change of the world. And from a level design perspective, when you're curating these spaces for players to engage in combat, either in PvE or in PvP, there is an element of strategy that gets introduced when that environment has destructibility as well. So you can clear those spaces, make mobility a bit uh, um, better serviceable for you, or vice versa. You could utilize, line of sight and interruption to kind of create interesting engagements. So those can be destroyed, and then they do respawn after a period of time. I believe currently that period of time is set to like 10 minutes for the respawns of those. Yeah.
And I think the community just got a bingo. They had the cat on the bingo card. I didn't make it happen. She came over here. Um,
Oh,
can we? Oh, yeah. For those of you who are new to our community, if you head on over to our Discord, our community always does like they make up a little bingo card. It's cute. Um, can we toggle nameplates for mobs, especially to show them outside of combat? So one of the things they noticed
oh
when you
yeah.
were playing is that when you were roaming in the world, you didn't really see nameplates until you had
Yes.
them targeted.
Yeah, that was a setting that I had enabled. Just because. Oh, so first of all, to
Steven
answer that
likes the
question,
immersion, you guys.
right? I know. I'm sorry. I'm not. I do like the immersion. It helps fulfill the fantasy of the world, but um, I also like to see nameplates from time to time. Anyways, it is entirely customizable currently. That customization option is already in game. You can set nameplates to always appear. You can set it to only appear on targets. You can set it to only appear on targets that have taken damage. You can set it to only appear on targets that are aggroing you or your party members. You can set it for your allies, for yourself, for, whatever. There's a lot of highly customizable options that are currently in the game.
All right. And we're going to have color options too for certain things for colorblind folks too. I think it was one of the things that we've worked towards. So we're gonna try to give you guys a lot of customization. I think even in alpha 2 you'll be able to like move and adjust your UI around. So um, yeah, keep that in mind. The next question is, are mob sounds like the goblin stock placeholder or Intrepid made audio? We got a lot of comments about
Yeah.
people really digging the audio. So good job, audio team. I know you guys work hard.
Yes, specifically that was Andrew, one of our audio designers. He recorded those goblin sounds and implemented them into the game. Yeah, those are not stock. Those are our audio designer Andrew's his nightly routine before he goes to bed. He does those incantations. Um,
Just screams into the ether. Ah!
exactly. No, he did a great job on those. They were really good. I mean, obviously, and that's unique, right, to obviously certain faction types, the ones that can have language, having those kind of spell incantations, I think add a lot of character. And he did a great job with those.
Yeah. And then, of course, does the fighter have any specific weapon dependent abilities? So, something that we are allowing people to do in Ashes of Creation is you can use any weapons and armor, but obviously there will be some that will be better for certain specs. So I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
Weapon dependent.
Like you have to use a specific weapon for a
Yeah,
specific ability,
I don't think the fighter I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe the fighter has a weapon dependent ability.
other than like using ranged weapons with melee specific abilities, right?
Right. And even in those situations, still think you can use the melee abilities. You just won't have a weapon equipped when you do them.
They'll
Yeah,
just like punch in or something.
right.
They'll have to sort that out. But of course, those are kind of we'll be here all day if we ask and answer all of the questions. So definitely, whenever we put up our next Q&A for next month, make sure you put your questions in there if you have follow-up questions for us. But we also have a thread up on our forums. You can go check it out right now. It is regarding our fighter archetype preview. So if you do have feedback for us regarding the archetype, definitely go give us as much as you want over there. And it doesn't have to just be about the fighter. I think Keenan brought up some great questions in the gameplay section, which was also, or might have not only been Keenan, but about like group play and the density in which we had mobs around there and all of that kind of stuff. So anything that you saw in this preview, please feel free to share feedback with us, as our wonderful community managers will be going through everything. They read every single comment you guys make. Even our social media team, Peter goes through that and also provides anything that's additional. So we give them as much as we possibly can on that front in regards to what y'all are thinking and how you're feeling about things, so that they don't have to read all of it. They can focus on making the game. And with that, we'll move over to
By the
studio
way, just
updates.
just to just to be clear, I want to give another shout out.
Yeah, go
Tori
for it.
also worked on the Goblin vocals as well. So it was Tori and Andrew. They split those up a bit. So those of you who are loving those sounds, big props to Tori and Andrew on that. It definitely immersed me when I
Yeah,
was
let's
playing
get
through.
some claps in chat, some hearts. We
Woo!
appreciate it. Next up, let's talk a little bit about studio stuff. We have a lot of roles that are up for hiring. We
Yes,
know
we
that the
do.
industry is crazy right now. You went to GDC.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit maybe about that as well.
Yeah, I did. I did go to
Yeah.
GDC. I went to GDC. I tried to fit all of my meetings into just 2 days so that I could get back to the studio as quickly as possible. So I was there for Tuesday and Wednesday. I did announce while I was there on Twitter that I would sit down in that St. Regis lobby from like 9 to 10 on Tuesday and 4 to 5 on Wednesday. And boy, did we have a turnout of people. That was a lot of fun to chat with everybody and where they are in their careers and their passion for ashes, and MMOs in general. I had a great time chatting with a lot of different people. Went on to the expo floor Wednesday in the afternoon for about an hour and got to meet just a lot of people who came up and were aware of ashes, and that helped recharge my motivation batteries, which was great. Um, we are hiring. We have some lofty hiring goals over the next 60 days. And you guys in the community who are watching and help, spread the word for Ashes and the company, you already have done an amazing job. I told you the story about some interviews I had where their gamer friends, after they had been laid off,
Spam
said,
tagging
"Now's your
them.
chance. Get over to Ashes," right? Um, I would call upon you once again to help spread the word. We have got, I think, like 8 or 9 design positions that are open currently. We have a number of production positions. We have a number of engineering positions. And Intrepid is a stellar place to work, and the project is a very fulfilling and exciting one. So, as you are aware of people in this industry that you look up to or that you admire, or um, whatever it may be, send them our way
And
because
some of those roles
we
on
are.
there, we're hiring for multiple people of those roles. So if you're
That's
like,
right.
you're like, but I only see 3 there, it's because we're hiring like 4 of that one role or whatever it might be. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it is. We need a lot of people to make this project. It is a lofty one.
Yes.
I think that's all I had. Things that I wanted to make sure that we mention. Is there anything else that you can think of, Stephen?
No, I think the only other thing that I would love to touch on is, the team is very heads down right now, working towards getting what we want to get ready for Alpha 2 ready. And I would say that, we have a wonderfully beautiful, glorious community, who have stood with us many steps of the way on this journey. And it is a journey that's not for everyone. Watching a game that's in development, constantly being teased every month about the product you want to play but can't touch yet, right? Like that,
Yeah,
that takes a
patience.
different level of patience, right? That not all of us are probably accustomed to. And sometimes that patience can wear thin, and that's fair. But what I can tell you is that patience is going to yield something, I think, distinct in our genre. What we're creating with this game, and it's been a long road. If I would quote Star Trek Enterprise and their intro song, "Getting from there to here." I'm sorry, but anyways, it's been a long road, and there's still a long road ahead of us. But when I go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning and spend my, waking hours, everything Ashes related, what I think about is that execution. And I think about what it would mean on a launch day of either Alpha 2 or a launch for the game where we didn't do what we needed to do in order to make the game good enough. And I'm not a perfectionist, right? I don't believe in waiting until a product is perfect, but I do believe in waiting until the product is good enough. And that is always my northern star. That's my guiding light when I think about the decisions that need to be made, regarding production, regarding marketing, regarding, development and design decisions. Like that is my guiding light, always from the player's perspective. So I just want to impress upon you all in the audience is that, when we hear our friends, our fellow MMO gamers talk about, wanting to either see something now or, hear something now or, whatever that might be, take it with the understanding that you can help communicate to them. Intrepid is trying to do things differently. And that's okay. That is a good thing. That is what this genre needs is, in my opinion, this level of engagement, this level of transparency, I think is a very important one. And it's been nice to kind of help pioneer that a bit for the genre. And I'm happy to see other projects take that
It's
on.
not an easy one to
And
do.
no, it didn't. I had a couple of discussions at GDC
Yeah, it's
with some
so
other
other
with some other
other
project
developers
directors.
thinking about
Yeah,
doing this. It is not an
absolutely.
easy
And
feat, you
it
know.
is not because, at the end of the day, like this takes a level of investment and a bit of an atypical approach to development that allows us to stand up this kind of development update process every month, right? And that investment is significant, but the reward is that we get a community along the way who is also invested in ensuring that the product outcome is what the community wants. And I think that cost is worth it, obviously. But what I want to say is that when you come across, fellow MMO gamers who are impatient or who, might not say the nicest things about the product, that's okay. It is okay, right? Let them come back and take a look when we do
They'll
get
be
to Alpha
back.
2 or when we exactly correct. So don't jump down the throats. Just, be prepared, open arms, smiling faces, and as we continue to stay on the road towards development, um, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
That is a lifelong message
And
I take home.
if you've followed us over the years, you've seen our progress. Like we continue to make progress. That is one of the beautiful things about having open development. The hardest thing is keeping that trust and building it, right? We understand that we're going to make mistakes. Everyone does, right? But it's how we communicate those and how we share that information with you guys. So um, we appreciate you. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for being here with us and motivating and providing us feedback. And, feedback does take time to fix and iterate on. So that is another
Absolutely.
thing too. So just keep those things in mind. And normally, folks are developing MMOs, 10, 15, 20 years in darkness. So they don't have that continual feedback. And you're not sitting there waiting for 10, 20 years, alongside of developers. And early on in development, you have a lot less staff because you're not, doing the nitty gritty. And as you get further along, you're staffing up, you're working towards bigger pieces, and that's when things start moving fast. So just thank you for your patience and continued patience and patience with other people who maybe don't have it.
Absolutely.
um, and with that, we'll move over to our wonderful art update. We have you guys got to see the Renkai in game too, which is cool. We've shown the models before, but we did show the heavy armor in game. And last time we showed you the medium armor for Carfin, and this is the light armor, and this is the medium. So these are all the Carfin armor that you've been seeing and the weapons and stuff like that. Those are all attainable in-game things from Carfin. So get excited for
Looks great.
Carfin. Yeah.
Love it.
Steven didn't want to put his helmet on in game.
I know. I was really enjoying the orc.
Mohawk.
Yeah, mohawk.
Just hide your helm, homie.
I know.
And then the next one here is a turntable of that, which looks amazing.
That does
So
look
good.
really good. Who worked on this?
Oh, I didn't put the names on the. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
It was a
I
bit
think
of
this
a
I think this might
crazy
have
week.
been I think this might have been Eli. Did Eli work on this?
I normally
Eli
do
probably or
grab the
Manny. I don't know.
names.
Sure.
And then Nikuan, we are now sharing with you. This is the starting gear for the Nikuan.
Oh
Nikua.
yeah, the Nikuan models and the starting gear.
Yeah, you've seen
They
the
look so good.
concept of the models. This is like a 3D. These are 3D models now with their starting
The
gear,
actual
and
models.
you've been starting to see some of the starting gear from all the other races. So we've been sharing them as we're moving along. And then we've got some cool VFX that were being worked on. Some of these you might have seen in game, or you will soon. We always go through different iterations of them.
No, those are those I believe are effects for the God Spike and
Yeah, the
the
Torn
Essence
God
Fissure.
Spike. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
actually have the Torn Spike. I was gonna save it for last, but I realized I should have put the VFX with that after. So we'll just share that next here.
Okay.
These are some of the concepts for them. Obviously, this is not the end model, but do you want to talk a little bit about what the Torn God Spike is for, or just leave them? Because
Sure.
I think you tease people. They're like, "What does that mean?"
Yeah, no, I talked a little. This is something you're going to be seeing
We
next
talked about
month.
it in our Discord.
Yeah, we talked about, the Tauran Empire was an ancient empire on Vera before the Aelins and the Aelins and the Pyrrhian empires got stood up. There was an empire of half elves that their demise came under the rule of King Atrax, and the God Spike was a particular interesting artifact that could help to initiate essentially this essence fissure that would spawn in certain areas, and would be able to kind of sap into and siphon out the essence that laid within Vera. So not to get in too much detail, but it is an interesting ancient artifact that can be used as part of certain war declarations that we may get some insight to in the coming month. That was run by
And
cat.
yeah, they both just ran in the room. That's I was like, oh my gosh. um, yeah, you're gonna get to see that next month. So get some. I want to hear some theories of what you guys think next month's topic is gonna be. And the next thing that we have here is some little spiderlings that are looking adorable with a big spider. So apologies
Oh,
for
look at the
anybody who
little
doesn't like
spider.
spooters. I won't
I
keep
think
them up on
Jinsey
screen
did
too long.
these.
I know we've got a lot of people out there who are like, I don't like spiders. It's okay, you could defeat them. And then we have some concept art pieces. We have some work that's being done towards academy nodes, highways, Aelin ruins, and the Kalar walls.
Those look great.
And of course, you guys have seen a lot. I know the cats are yelling in the background. You guys have seen some of these concept pieces in the past with us, and then we've shown you the in-game world. And a lot of people are like, it looks like the concept. Our artists are amazing. We try to give them a little showcase every week. It's never enough, I'm sure. And with that, I think we'll just wrap up with our Q&A as per usual, and I will play some more of the fighter preview whilst we do that. Maybe
All
I'll move
right.
to the in-game part where you guys are fighting all the monsters.
Let's
Whilst
see what
we answer questions.
what
Um,
um
so
what
the first
questions we have.
we have some spicy ones. No, they're not too spicy.
Oh, spicy? Spicy.
Well, maybe some of them are spicy.
Okay.
Harry Glenn wants to know about buffs. Will there be long-term individual or group buffs unique to certain archetypes and classes? And this is in lieu of, when you think about general rating where you go and you're like, I'm going to put this hour-long buff on somebody. Are those types of things going to be something that you're going to have experience? Like, everybody group up, we're going to rate, we're going to buff up.
Yes, those are definitely an intended experience. Um, I think actually though our longest buff right now is intended to be 30 minutes. So I'm not sure we have hour-long buffs. If we do have hour-long buffs, though, they would likely come in the form of edibles of well, excuse me, that's probably wrong term. Um, food.
Food.
Yes.
Rations. Steven, the chat's just
Exactly.
like laughing. Uh,
It's too
oh,
good.
it's too funny. Falcus wants to know about naval risks. What's the repair cost for destroyed ships and components? Is it risky to venture into the ocean knowing repairs might be
Yes,
costly, or is it
absolutely.
manageable enough to encourage frequent exploration? And this is
No,
coming from
like
people seeing our caravan exploration stuff.
sure. Yeah, like most things in Ashes, there is risk in traveling across the seas is not a easy adventure. So when you suffer either damage or destruction, obviously those will each contain different levels of risk. The damage will be much more manageable if actively attempting to repair that while at sea, which you will have options to do on ships, is actively repair. Your crew can actively repair if they have the appropriate materials. But if you do, unfortunately, suffer some major mishap and are completely destroyed, the cost will be great in reconstituting your vessel.
All right, the next one is from OTR Oder that wants to know about coastal node ZOIs. Will the deep ocean be encompassed into the zone of influence of coastal nodes? I feel like we've talked about this before, but it might have been with PI.
I'm sorry, repeat that last part of it again.
Um, will the deep ocean be encompassed into the zone of influence of coastal nodes? So the coastal nodes, will the
Oh, I
deep sea
see.
be
I
part
see.
of
I
that?
see.
And I think we've said no before, but
Yeah, no, the deep sea, while it exists technically as part of a zone of influence, it does not contribute to those coastal node areas. So um, the coast does, not the deep sea, but it is primarily the land environments that are going to be contributing to the node's experience grant.
there you have it.
And
Just
that
folks
that
were curious
obviously
about it.
and that obviously might change, right? We'll see kind of how that plays out during Alpha 2.
And then we've got Leonardo who wants to know about server culture. Knowing that there won't be PvP or PvE only servers, how will new players find a server that fits their playstyle, culture, expectations? And I don't think we've ever said there won't be PvP or PvE only servers, but I think that's what people are under the
We
impression.
haven't, I don't think we've officially said that, but
Mm-mm.
there won't be PvP or PvE servers. Um, the intended design is that PvP events are the primary method by which consensual PvP exists for players. They opt into those. And then non-consensual PvP is governed through our flagging system, which is highly disincentivizing players to engage in non-consensual PvP through the act of corruption gaining. So the question was, how will players get to choose um, their PvP experience? Is that what it was?
Yeah, well, if you're new and let's say maybe you're a PvE primary player, how will I know
Sure.
which server to join? Like what culture
Oh,
is
I
going to be
see.
best
I
for
see.
me?
I
Yeah.
see. I see. Ashes is a PvX game. And so in that regard, your ability to wholesale disconnect from the PvP elements of the game are likely not going to be entirely successful. Now, does that mean that you can reduce your exposure to PvP? 100%, right? And there are multiple play paths and progression points that players can elect instead to be more PvE focused. But by the sheer nature of risk versus reward, and risk including not being able to predict how other players might impact your gameplay, that is an element of the innate risk that exists in the multiplayer environment of a PvX setting. So, not everybody is going to like that. And we accept that, right? And we're not trying to build a game that everybody is going to
Yeah.
like,
It's not for
because
everybody. It's a niche.
doing that, absolutely, doing that is not going to be successful. Because they're just people with different interests. And we accept that, and we're very kind of on the nose about what we're trying to achieve, right? The idea is not to create a gank fest, is not to create a grief fest. That is not what PvX is. And so because of that, we have certain mechanisms and systems that govern the way players engage in PvP. And majority of those are opt-in, but there is always that element of risk that's governed by the flagging system. And so if you're interested in that, I would take a look at the wiki and look up what flagging is and look up what corruption is. My experience tells me, and my expectations of the system are, that they will significantly reduce a player's exposure to non-consensual PvP, but that risk is always going to be present to some degree.
My recommendation, make friends.
That's right.
Get in a guild. It's an MMO. It's not meant to be a solo playing experience. Not that you
That's
can't.
right.
It's just that's more risky. So if you like risking it for the biscuit, that's your call. And then Lineker and Emily kind of were asking about biome development. Will we see other biomes outside of the Riverlands? I think we've seen a lot of the Riverlands lately. And then
Sure.
what biomes are planned for the start of Alpha 2?
So as we get closer to Alpha 2, I will have a better answer for the expected biomes at the start of Alpha 2. Um, we have probably completed the assets for about 7 biomes, I think, roughly. And what I mean by that is we're talking about terrain, we're talking about foliage, different tree types, we're talking about geological features and different types of stone work and whatnot. From a environment standpoint, biome creation is more advanced. But biomes are like, they're essentially zones, right? And zones require more to be complete than just the environmental assets. They require content creation. That's point of interest development. Those are environmental sets that are needed to sell kind of the ancestral ruins. There is narrative and quests that are required to populate a zone. There are creatures and creature design that's required to populate a zone. So if we're talking about biomes from an environmental perspective, there's been a lot of progress made towards our overall
I
biome
think it's more
intent.
the question here is really when will they see those biomes?
Well, we've shown the desert biome. They've
Hmm.
seen the jungle biome in Alpha 1.
Hmm.
They have seen some of our tabletop mountains. We have shown obviously the riverlands. Um, we will continue to show those biomes in the future at some point, right? When they're ready to show. And when it comes to what's expected at the beginning of Alpha 2, that's something that when we are certain of what that will be, because development can be fluid, right? We're in the progress of development. Um, so, I would say stay tuned for when we're ready to share what that's going to be.
Yeah, and I think on the front of what you can expect from Alpha 2 and the guide for that, we will put out an article that kind of gives you an overview of what features and systems and areas will be available. We've done that before. We've given you like a map and the keybinds and all of that jazz. So we will do that again for you guys again in the future. So just stay tuned. And as we get closer to Alpha 2, you're probably going to see more of that information coming to play. The next one here is from Tyranthraxis, and they want to know about ship and combat collision. How will naval combat and raiding work if ships cannot be moved or blocked?
How will naval combat work if ships cannot be moved or blocked?
Yeah.
Ships can be moved. Um, you're talking about like collision, like pushing ships in the different directions in the water.
Yeah, I think that's what they mean.
Okay. Yeah. The intent is that we adhere to some semblance of real physics feelings, right, with regards to these vehicles. And so ships do have the potential to be pushed in different directions and out of the way for each other. That is an intended collision experience that we want ships to have, but it should come with significant risk and potential damage to the vessels themselves.
All right. And then the next one here is from Hutchie 1989, and they want to know about commission credit. Will one get credit for quest objectives or for completing a commission when in a raid? We talked about yes, if you're in a party, you can get a commission credit. But what about if you're in a raid?
Oh, I see. Um, that's a good question. And I think in the majority of cases, if we do allow progression within narrative systems like a quest or commission, um, I think that's something that's going to be distributed based on the number of raid or party participants, right? So killing a particular monster is not going to get everybody a check mark on their progress towards killing 20, right? It's going to be one person's going to get that progression. And then it'll continue to the next person, and so on and so forth. If we're talking about some quest lines like story arcs or events that have phases or that have overall participation by many members, then that progress can be shared at a party raid level. So there's different settings depending on what objective there is within a quest. Some of them will share, some of them will be distributed.
Right. And then APOC wants to know about shipbuilding. So if we don't, we have a lot of naval questions. Y'all are very curious about naval stuff. Shipbuilding. So if we don't have a coastal node leveled up, are the SOL on are we SOL on building and launching ships? So are we just like helpless in that? So if we don't personally have a coastal node set up, can we not build and launch ships?
No, you can absolutely build and launch ships. Coastal nodes are not where ships get built and launched. Harbors are where ships get built and launched. And harbors are essentially dilapidated points of interest that progress when a node nearby, coastal or not, um, adopts that point of interest or that harbor. then the node can contribute towards building up the harbor, and players who may not be citizens of that node can still go to that harbor and access its services.
And then we are in our penultimate question here. We're almost to the end. So thank you all for staying with us. Apolphis wants to know about active blocking spells. How will active blocking function when it comes to spells? Will players be able to parry spells? We talked about active blocking in melee occurrences, but they're curious about more spell oriented.
Hold on one second before we get to that question. Let me give
Go
some
for it.
clarity. So the question I saw from Ashes of Nerer was, so a group of 8 will have to kill 8 times 20 goblins. No, in regards to, like, it depends on the objective. If it's a kill objective, then being in a group of 8 or potentially in a raid, everyone will get credit for the kill. If it's a drop that's required, like a quest drop off of a loot container or a monster, and one person grabs the quest reward, not everyone will get the quest reward from that individual drop. So just want to clarify, it
Unless it's an
depends on
event
the
necessary.
correct, exactly. I just want to clarify, it depends on the objective, right? The intent is not to gimp healer classes or support classes, from getting those things. Yeah. Okay, sorry. What was that, Margaret? The last question?
No, no problem. It's good to clarify. How will active blocking function when it comes to spells? Will players be able to parry spells?
Active blocking. So yes, it depends. So active blocking is a part of our universal skill tree, and active blocking, depending on what piece of equipment you have equipped, some will be catered towards magic in blocking, and some will be catered towards physical damage in blocking. So if you have a physical shield, you're likely going to have little efficacy against active blocking against a spell. However, if you have a sigil equipped, which is essentially the arcane variant of a shield, and you actively block, then you might have good efficacy against the spell.
All right. And our final question for this development update is from Livu, who wants to know about mount use cases. Will players need multiple mounts on their skill bar for various purposes like immunity, gliding, combat, and escaping, or will the gameplay be more focused on using just one mount? And I'm really excited for us to show mount abilities in the future because I know that's something that's on the plate.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the intent is that mounts have varying abilities, and it's expected that you will have a number greater than one of mounts available to use. Now, whether or not that number is influenced or governed by a stable system, that is something that is still in active design and development. It is likely that you will not be able to carry every mount you own and be able to use them all at the same time. There will probably be some governor to that, and it will likely be serviced through a default building that exists in every node, which is the stables. And then to the second part of that question, is it intended that mount abilities are providing a matrix of choices, options, or strategy to the player? The answer would be yes. Because we have these abilities and different stat blocks that are governed through the animal husbandry system, the desire is to make sure, like any other piece of equipment or itemization choice, that strategy is carefully considered when determining the appropriate mount use.
All right. And that gets us to the end. We made it. It has been a very long one for us all. So thank you so much, everybody, for bearing with us, sticking around. Hopefully, you had lots of snacks. Maybe got a potty break in there. But of course, we do want to mention again to head on over to our forums.ashesofcreation.com. Give us your feedback. We have a thread over there already for the fighter archetype preview. If you have any thoughts, definitely share them with us. We will be compiling that and sharing that with the development team. And of course, thank you so much to our development team. Everybody has been kicking butt, but of course, an extra special thank you to Trad, Brian, and Keenan for joining us for this specific showcase. And of course, Stephen, for your time. I know this is a lot for you. He's been a busy, busy bee. And of course, that we thank you all for being here. And, we hope that you have another wonderful, safe, and healthy month as we kick butt and work towards our next live stream that's coming up here. And of course, internally, we have some big sprints that are coming up, which is very, very
Yes.
exciting for us. We are preparing our butts for Alpha 2, and I'm telling you, we've been prepping a lot and getting a lot of things in place and even some polish time for us. So that's been a big, big thing for us, is making sure that you guys have a great experience, and lots of performance work, as Stephen had noted before. Of course, we will have the video up on the 4K video will be up on YouTube today, so stay tuned for that. And of course, we will have the full development update for you up tomorrow, pending YouTube cooperates with us. Make sure that if you want your comment spotlighted, to make a comment on that development update video and leave a comment there. Make sure that it shows you publicly as a subscriber, so that when we pick random, it shows you up there. And of course, follow us in all the places. We are Ashes of Creation, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the places, Snapchat. We try to post everywhere. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next month for another update.
Woo! Bye, everybody. See you guys.
Bye. Just got to find the end screen.